Hi, I'm Operations Manager for Grant Cottage, Ben Kemp, and I'm here to share a few items with you that we will soon be putting on display here at the historic site. They deal with the end of Grant's life, and each has a unique story to tell. And we're very excited to have these items and to be able to display them for visitors here at the Visitor Center of our historic site. So the first item we have here is a letter in an envelope from Charles L Webster and Company, publishers, from East 14th Street in New York City. Now, we also have the envelope that goes with this letter. Charles L. Webster was the nephew-in-law of Samuel Clemens, better known as Mark Twain. And Twain hired his nephew-in-law to run his publishing firm, and it was named Charles L. Webster and Company. Webster had an enormous task. Once Mark Twain agreed to publish the memoirs for his friend Ulysses S. Grant, Webster had to make sure that all the supplies for printing, all the salesmen were all trained and hired. There was an army of door-to-door salesmen that needed to be sent materials for selling this book door to door. And this was before it was even done. In fact, this letter is dated on June 16th of 1885. And that's the day that Grant arrived here on Mount McGregor. And what's interesting is on the envelope, it actually says Charles L. Webster and Company, publishers, personal memoirs of U.S. Grant, Mark Twain's works. So they're already putting it on their stationery that they are the publishers, even though the book hasn't been completed yet. And the letter is signed by Charles Webster, and it is to a prospective book agent or a hiring agent for book agents. And so that's a big part of the story, is that Mark Twain, his publishing firm, went out, hired people to go door to door, and sold 100,000 copies even before Grant passed away here on Mount McGregor. So a wonderful piece of history that we'll have on display here at the cottage. The other item in there is a facsimile of the actual advertisement for Grant's memoirs. And of course, they also advertised in the newspapers all across the nation for book agents as well for selling the book. So a big part of it, the story here at Mount McGregor. The other item we have here is a bit more of a somber item. This is an original funeral brochure given out at Grant's funeral here at Mount McGregor. They did have, most people are familiar with the large funeral that was held on August 8th in New York City. There was even a funeral held in Albany, New York, a few days before that. But the first funeral was on August 4th here on Mount McGregor, held right on the porch of Grant Cottage. And it was a smaller ceremony compared to those other two. The family stayed inside the parlor, dignitaries were out on the porch, and thousands more surrounded the cottage on the grounds. And so this commemorates that. It has a listing of the different, the benediction and the different components of the ceremony, including Reverend Newman's rather extensive eulogy that was given here, and that was also printed in the newspapers. But it says, in memoriam U.S. Grant service at the Drexel Cottage, because that's what it was known as at the time, because it was owned by Joseph Drexel, a friend of the Grant family. Mount McGregor on Tuesday, August 4th, 1885, 10:30 a.m. And of course, directly after the ceremony, Grant's casket was taken from the mountain and carried to the funeral train here and went on its journey down to Albany and City Hall and eventually to his tomb in New York City. So this is a wonderful piece of history. There weren't that many of these produced, so it's wonderful that we have one here, and we look forward to having this out on display for visitors to see a piece of history. Now this item here is, this is a death mask taken of General Grant, and again this is a copy, a later copy. Not exactly sure when this copy was made. There are a couple of original models out there, but this is a copy, and it's got some embellishment here, so maybe like kind of a Greek theme here. But this was made by a sculptor named Carl Gerhardt. He was a young man. He actually was an associate of Samuel Clemens, Mark Twain. Mark Twain had actually financed his education, and he came and did a bust of General Grant in the New York City home during his final illness. So the family was very happy with that, how that bust came out, and I believe it was essentially made as part of the promotion for the memoirs. So the family was comfortable with Gerhardt. Gerhardt came to Mount McGregor and essentially waited for Grant to pass away. He was there to make this mask as soon as Grant passed away, and it became a slightly uncomfortable situation for a little while, because that is a strange position to be put in. But Gerhardt spent his time doing some other activities with the family to lighten the mood. And when the time came on July 23rd, 1885, when Grant passed away, Gerhardt was one of the first people admitted into the cottage to do his work. And this was done within a half an hour of Grant's passing. And so it was done very quickly. And again, it immortalized Grant. And a lot of times they would do this for famous figures, but also, you know, to use for later models, for later statues and memorial works. So this is a wonderful example of a piece of history. Definitely gives you an impression of what Grant looked like just as at his time of his passing. So a wonderful window into the history here on Mount McGregor. And we're excited to have these items and more being put into some of our exhibit cases this year to bring to visitors that are able to come this year. Wonderful items here. We hope that you come and visit us this summer as soon as we're able to open, and we hope that you enjoy the artifacts we're able to bring to you, and thanks for watching.